So we initialize Git repository, we initialize npm install express mongoose. That's it. Okay, install my dependencies. I need my server and yeah, I'll start with that. So now let me copy and paste. Let's see, this one. Okay, tasks. Let's do the RESTful task API one. Path body parser, express. Okay, we're good. Change that to 8. Okay, so now at this point we need to install Angular. Okay, so we can run ng new public yes to routing CSS. And we're doing forms, right? Some of the CRUD stuff.
Yeah. I also want to go through routing, how to set it up.
Okay.
What about CRUD and forms?
Okay, we can touch on that too. Okay, so created our Angular app. We can just test this. So in order to test this, we need we'll need nodemon, run our express server, and then cd into public, and run ng build watch. Okay, and we should be able to go to, what did it say? 3 or I think 8. Okay, then we have our Angular app running. So now we can start configuring our stuff. So source and then app. So we need to create our service. So in the terminal, let's run ng generate service, call it HTTP. And then inside of the modules, we have to import a couple things. So our import HTTP service from service. Excuse me, sorry. And then HTTP goes in the providers or imports? Which arrays? Providers array. Okay, and then inside here we also need to import HTTP client module from Angular. Angular common / HTTP, and HTTP client module goes into the imports array. Okay, inside of our service we import HTTP client, right? Angular / HTTP, and inside of our constructor underscore HTTP client. Okay. Then we go to our component.ts, and inside of this component we need to import which file? HTTP service. Oops. Okay, and then in here set up our constructor for underscore HTTP. Okay. So I think that's it in terms of configuring for now. Now, what we want to do is have this page load the entire or all of the tasks, for example, right? So let me just get, not Bootstrap, my link here. Okay. And then in my index file, we'll just add it here. Okay, so now inside of my app component HTML file, I can take all of this out. Maybe not all of it. Yeah, we'll leave it at that. And then inside here, we'll need the table, right? Bootstrap table. I'll just grab this first one. We'll put our table in here. And let's see what we have. Okay, so now there's our table. We want to populate it with all of our tasks. So the first thing that we do, if we want something to happen as soon as the page loads or the component is rendered, what do we need? ng on init, right? So we have to also import on init. Okay, and then we need to use the ng on init on init. Is that it? Yeah, ng on init. And then inside of here, we'll invoke the function that gets all of the tasks. Okay, so we'll call this dot get task function. Okay, and then we'll just build it down here. Get tasks. So in here, we want to create the observable. So we'll run this dot http service dot get all tasks. We'll subscribe to it, and then we have our observable. And then inside here, we can just console log the data just to see what we get. Get all tasks does not exist in our service file yet, so we go to our service, and we'll just build the function here and return this .http .get / task, I think. What I call it, / tasks. And that should be it. So now if I render or refresh this page, open the console, we get an error, app.component.ts. Get all tasks subscribe is not a function at app component. Probably a typo or something. Subscribe. Okay. Refresh. Cool. And here's all of our tasks. Okay, so now we just need to populate the table with it. So we'll set a variable of tasks of any. And once we get here, this dot tasks will equal data with the key of tasks. Okay. So I can inside this the app component.html, maybe just on the top here, we can use the JSON pipe. So we'll call them task and pipe JSON just to see the object if it loads here. So we'll refresh. Here's all the information about it. Does that look weird? Maybe not. Okay, so we'll take away these two rows, and we have which task? We have the ID, we have the title, description, and yeah, completed, description, and the title. So I have a title, description, and completed. Okay, so in here we'll have first we need the for loop. We'll do it in the body. Okay, so ng4 equals let task of tasks. So then inside here we have task.id and task.title, and then task.description, and then task.completed. Okay, so if let's take this out too. Refresh. Okay, here's my 2 tasks that I have so far. The ID is not showing up though. Just need a underscore. This one. Okay. Okay, so now we need to add on top of here actions or something. Okay, so this first one, this is where the routing is going to come in, where we have to be building the other components and then route to the different components. So this first one will have it be in a tag to say, or actually, yeah, let's do edit, delete, and show. So on the top here, we'll create the button, call this an a tag, and we'll say add new task. We'll give this just a button class of info, favorite one. Refresh. Here's the add new task. It's going to be a button that's supposed to render another component, swap out this one, or load just a different component. Okay, so when we click on add new task, the thing is with this one, we have the router outlet down here, right? So even if we have like a router or something to render a new template, this top table is still going to show up, and this router outlet is going to represent the other component we're trying to load. So it's not really swapping in and out like we would imagine. Does that make sense? So what we need to do is we need to create a home component. We'll create another component that's going to be the home page, which is essentially what we just built. Okay, that way these components can switch in and out from each other. Does that make sense? Yes, no? This is right now, the way we built this out is behaving as the home page, right? But our router outlet is down here. So when we say go to another component, the other component is going to be swapping out from the bottom of this page. None of the content on top is going to be swapping in and out, right? So we need another component to put this part in. That way the router outlet is rendering the home component with all this stuff, and when we say to switch, the router outlet will render another component instead. Okay?
So like the home component is going to be displayed, and then
No, the home component we want it to swap out too. Okay, so we want this to be its own component rather than being part of the main component. Okay, so inside the terminal, we'll just build mine the public. So ng generate component, and we'll just call it home. Okay, so now here's our home component, and we're just going to transfer all of this stuff to the home component, essentially, right? So if we go to the home component, go to the TS inside here, we're going to import the HTTP service. Now this is where you have to go back one more file. So instead of just // you have to go // to go back 2 directories, or go back outside of the directory, I mean, so you can find the HTTP service file. Okay, and then the constructor. Notice the ng on init's already declared or imported. Okay. What is this? Is declared here? Oh. Okay, so if I go to my app component, I can just copy this method, home component, paste it in here, and then just call it from in here. This dot get tasks, and then copy this as well. And take that out. So then nothing is going to be inside of my app component. .ts. And then in here, we're going to take out from there all the way out to here. Everything pretty much. Everything but the router outlet. It's going to go in the home.html. Okay. So, let me just comment all of this out real quick. Whoops. And what should show on here is ptag homeworks. Okay, so now when we load up the page, we're gonna see nothing, okay, because it's loading the app.component HTML. It's loading this one right now, which only has the router outlet, and we haven't created the route that's going to render the home component yet. Okay, so now that's what we're gonna do. So we go to the app routing. Here, this is where we declare our routes. So it's an array, so each object is gonna be its own route. So inside of the array, the first route we're gonna do is with path that matches slash home. Is going to load home component. Okay, so first you set the URL, and then the component is going to be whichever component you want to render based off of that URL. Okay, and that's where the router outlet comes in to decide which component is going to load. Make sense? So if I refresh this, slash home cannot be, cannot start with slash. So here you don't need a slash because it's gonna concatenate from the root route, localhost. So then we're doing like double slash. So here you don't have to. Refresh. Why isn't it working? Do we have to configure anything? Oh, that's why. We need to go to slash home. Go to slash home, and here we have homeworks. Okay, so now we can uncomment all of this, delete that. So if we refresh again, it has this. Now we have an error slash tasks, unknown error. See here. Okay, there we go. Okay, so now we have the home component that's rendering, and now we want to be able to click on this button to render another component, a new component. Okay, so inside of the routing, first we're gonna open up the terminal and create the new. We'll just call it the new component. ng generate component new. Okay, so the new one should be right here. So now based on this routing, we want to create another route that has a path of of just new, which is going to load the component, new component. Okay, so notice it pre-populates it, it imports it automatically. So now if we go to slash new, it should load the new component here. So we could test it if we go to slash new instead of slash home. Now we have new works. Okay, it's loading that component. So what we want to do is let the button decide to go to that route. So in the platform, we'll just copy the routing, the way the routing works there. Angular, navigation, and routing. So it gives you all of the routing you need, right? Where's it at? Oh, here. So this is creating a button that will pretty much like a link in a tag, right? This is a syntax. You're going to use a router link. So I'll just copy it and paste it inside of my home component for, where's my button at? Oh, here it is. New task. So instead of going to /alpha, I want to go to /new. Okay, to render the new component. So now if I go back to home, what does it say? Oh, what is this? If I go to /task on the bottom here, down there you can see it says /new, right? So if I click it, now I go to new. Okay. So inside of my new, we'll just do one of the CRUDs here. Inside of new, instead of new works, we're gonna have a div, a container, and we'll have our form here. So this should render form control. Title. Description and completed. And then don't forget our button. Type submit and class okay, refresh. Cool, here's our form. Let's add a title in here. New task. Okay. So now we have to make some changes in order to use the form. What are those configurations we need to add in order to use a form? It's a module that we need to add to our modules file. Starts with form, ends with module. Forms module. Okay, so if we go back to the platform, it shows us inside of the DOM manipulation, posts, events. Which one? Oh, forms right here. In forms, okay, we need to import the forms module inside of our module.ts file. Okay, and then we need to add it to our imports array. So now we can use the ng form module. Okay, so inside of this new component in the platform, it shows us that we need this ng model. Okay, so along with the form, I'm gonna just add it here. They all need a name, which will be task dot title for this first one, description, and completed. Okay, as well as put it here. ng model, right? Oh, and in curly brackets. Shucks. And it's going to equal the same thing. Task dot title. Copy and paste this here. And task dot description, task dot completed. So because we're saying task.title exists here, where else does it need to exist? In our component.ts. So if we go to the new component, we have to create that variable called task. Okay. And so that way, if we come up here and start typing, this task variable should be populating with these values as we type it, right? And we can see that live with using which tool? Type. Okay, so if I refresh, can I read title of undefined? Okay. So saying title is, or task is undefined, there's no key of title inside of the task variable. So we need to just initialize it. So this dot task is going to equal title and description and completed, right? Okay. Well, not completed. Refresh. Okay, so now we have empty values for all of these inputs. So as I type, make sure our two-way binding is working. We can type and the values are automatically being updated as we type. Okay, and this is done through the ng model, right? Very similar to our binding results, right, in Java. The model attribute, I mean, in when we work with Spring. So it's two-way binding through in that way. It's a little bit different, but it's a similar idea. Okay, so now if we were to hit submit, okay, we need a function that needs to be invoked inside of the new. Okay, so what does this part look like? Instead of this action, what am I listening for? Submit. Okay, so on submit, I'm going to invoke create task function, right? So then in my component here, I need to build that function, create task, and this is going to call this.http service, which we actually need to import here. So let's import our HTTP service from, okay, it's HTTP service, and inside our constructor, okay, dot create new task. What goes inside of the parentheses? What goes in here? This dot task. Okay, and then here we'll just console log whatever data comes back. Okay, so when we create new tasks, this needs to be created inside of the service. So then we go to our service file, add create new task, receive the task object that we passed in, and then we're going to return the observable dot post to slash tasks slash, I forget what I put there, post slash task slash new. Okay, and then also pass in task. Okay, this is all of our post data. All right, so then now, once we submit this information, so say new title would be play something. Do it nicely. True. Okay, so if we click submit, okay, our message that we get back from the observable is that it's success. It created an ID for this new task, so that worked. Okay, but now what we want to do is redirect to that home page. Okay, so it shows in here inside of the routing, the tools that we need to do that. So inside of the component.ts, you got to import these things: active route, params, and router from the Angular/router. So let's do that up here, and then we got to create these guys, these instances. So we'll add that to our list of variables, and then inside of here, this router navigate, this is navigating back to the home. Sorry, can you guys see that? This line here is calling on the _router variable and calling on the navigate function that redirects us to /home. Okay, so I can go just copy and paste this. As soon as I get the data back, I can just redirect. What did I call it? Oh, did I put it in the wrong one? I put it in my service. That's what I did. Let's take this out of here. Not in your service. This goes inside your component. As well as these guys. They don't go in there. So let's go back to component and then add it here. Okay, so now it's saying this router navigate to back to /home, so it should see the other route or the other component. So let's try it again. Instead of play something cool. False. Submit. It prints us success/tasks, but it didn't redirect us. Anyone know why? Oh, there we go. We didn't refresh. Okay, so here's all the ones that we've been creating so far. So if we go back here, then we can type it in again, hit submit, it'll create a new one, right? So if we hit submit, it was still successful. We got all tasks, but when we submitted it, it gave us a error, right? So it didn't actually create the empty input that we put in. So this is where the validation comes in, where we need to, once we come back in here, the data, so we need to check if, what's the message that's coming back in the post route. Message will either equal error or it's going to equal success. Okay, so we need a test for that inside of our new. So if data with the key of message equals error, okay, we need to handle the data accordingly. We can console log there was an error or something, but it does show that up here. So we need to take these error messages. Where's the messages at? These error messages and print them to the screen. Okay, so it's just a matter of traversing through this error object, getting the value, and then displaying that value. Right, so we can follow this by going into the data with the key of error, and then the key of errors, and then inside of there, there's completed, description, or title, and then inside of there, there's the message of the actual error. So we got to find it for all of them. So let's create a error. Okay. And you can say if data with the key of error, then the key of errors, and then for the first one we'll do completed. No, not completed. Let's do description. So if that one exists, then we want to get the message, right? Then this dot error with the key of description equals this entire path with the key of message. Does that make sense? So first we're checking if that key exists, because it's only going to exist if there's an error. Then if it does exist, we're going to locally store the actual message coming from the error object. Okay? So if I go to new task, inside of the new component, for the description at least, we can put in p tags error with the key of description. Okay, let's give it a tax of danger. Okay, same thing as before. So it wants us to do this also for the error object. Refresh. So I hit submit. Oh, I didn't. So else we'll do this. Go back, test it again, submit. Damn it. Refresh. And there's our error message. Okay. Otherwise, the else statement will catch if there's no errors. So this will need to be done with all of them. Whoops. Right? So one for the description. Title. And then completed. Okay, and then inside of the new component, we got to do the same thing for title, and then also for completed. Okay, refresh, test it again, and there's all three. Okay, cool. So now if I just do one, it's still there. So there's a little bit of tweaking we have to do, right? So if it's still the old value, so we pretty much have to reset it, right? So this dot errors equals an empty object, pretty much, right? Is what it's asking us to do. Submit, change this, reset it to 0, but then reassign whatever current values are there. If this one works, then only this one will show. Does that make sense? So you can also build a function reset error, and then say this dot error equals an empty object, and instead of doing it in here, we'll just call reset error, like that. There are Angular's way of validations. There are for Angular, but for the exam, what we want you to be able to do is take the error messages from your server and be able to bring them to the front end and display those error messages. Okay, there are more advanced ways of validating through Angular validations, like more front end validations, but this is back end validations, right? Being able to use your restrictions from the back end and then bring those messages to the front. Mongoose?
Yeah.
Yeah, these are where the messages are coming from.
Oh, okay.
So these messages are coming from the server up here.
All right.
These are the same messages. But when we return, we're returning the error object if there was an error. So this is where these messages are coming from. Okay. Questions? Okay. Was that helpful? Is that what you... So we did the routing, right? You just have to create the component and then route the component to go to whichever component you want to go based off of this guy. So this is going to be the same thing, not only for the new, but for the edit. Go to /edit, you're going to render the edit component. right? And then also the show as well. They're all going to be different components based on the routing. You're going to swap them in and out. Okay. And then let's just do just one more. Let's do the delete. Okay, and then we'll call it there. So with the home component, we need the home HTML page. So instead of this delete, we're gonna call on, based on the click, we're gonna call on delete task. And what are we gonna pass in here? Task.id. Okay. Click. Okay, so now inside of the home component, we can just build this delete route, accept the ID in here, and then call this .http service delete one task, pass in the ID, subscribe, and then we'll just console log. We'll just console log the data. Okay. Then from here, we call on our service file, create the delete method, receive the ID in here, and we can just return the observable. This .http.delete to slash task slash ID, right? Okay, so we can test that up here, refresh on delete. When we click it, says success. So it deletes the route or the task. You press this one, another success, but it's not changing. Right, we need to fetch all the data again, right? Because it's new, it's been updated. So if we go to the home component and then just call on this .get tasks to get all the tasks again, updated version, then it should be updated. So click this middle one, get all the tasks. Not too bad.
So when you're doing routing, you want to either add routing component, HTML, the root, like the root.
Clear, yeah. You don't want it. You don't need anything in there. Okay, unless one thing that you might want in there, but you really wouldn't, is like if the component had a nav bar, right? So the app dot component on top, if I added some sort of nav inside of app dot component, my nav would be in here, right? Home, whoops, would be in here. So now if I refresh this page, my nav would be here. It doesn't matter which page I go to, I can click on these, have the different navs. So the bottom here is switching out the different components based off of my nav bar on top. That's going to stay the same.
Which file had the actual HTML tags and all that stuff? Like, because in the app that component that HTML, it only has the router.
Router outlet,
Which file has
like this.
the actual HTML tags and
I'm not sure what you mean.
the actual file that holds the thing?
Uh-huh.
Because in your app.html, it only has router outlet, right?
Uh-huh.
Like which file has that? Yeah, the index.
That is the app.
No, there's other ones that holds.
Oh,
Yeah,
the index. I don't think we ever used the index.
Like this one.
yeah.
So this is the app root. This is the root component, and all of the components are nested within this.
So that has the app that component.
Yeah.
Okay.
So this page does.
And that's where we add all our scripts and everything.
Yeah, all the links that you want to exist globally throughout the whole app, put them in here.
So the components will not have the HTML tags at all because
Right.
it's using them.
So the components are just snippets of the HTML page. Okay. Any more questions you want in the video? Maybe tomorrow we can do the rest of the CRUD or something if we need it. Okay, well, I'm stopping the recording. I swear I'm gonna do it.